Today, we hear a lot about pressure. In the alcoholic problem in particularly, we find that pressure plays a very important part. Now, Alcoholics Anonymous gives us a very effective principle against pressure. It's a principle that you have heard a lot about in AA, and I think it is a very important principle to every alcoholic, and the principle is easy does it. Now, before we actually analyze this principle, let's first acquaint ourselves with another universal law of nature, telling us that there's one thing that is true in all forms of nature, both animal, human, and even the ordinary inanimate nature. And that is that no one or no thing starts at the top. No one, no thing begins at maturity. No one ever reaches the top or maturity just like that. Now, alcoholics, we know, are perfectionists. In fact, most human beings are perfectionists. But the alcoholic is the type of perfectionist that he wants perfection right now. He wants to get there just like that. We had a fellow in Indianapolis one time, and there was a call came in that he had a little slip, and that he was in Columbus, Ohio, in the Daschler Hotel. So another fellow and myself drove over to Columbus, Ohio, and there in the hotel, this fellow had a 7-room suite with a fifth of liquor in every room. Perhaps he bowed to him as he went through the suite. Well, we finally got him into his car and agreed to go back to Indianapolis. But all the way back home, all of a sudden he would grab the fellow who was driving and say, "Stop this car, right now, right now." And I can't help but thinking that's typical of the alcoholic personality. Now, this would be all right, this perfectionism, if we were willing to spend the time and the patience and have the tolerance and the ability and the talents to reach perfection. They tell us Mr. Disney is a perfectionist, but a perfectionist who is willing and is capable and has the patience and ability to reach perfection in his works. In all life, no one begins at the top. Let's take the spiritual life. First, there is conversion. I don't mean conversion to religion. I mean conversion to the value of spiritual entities in regulating our lives. But once that happens, there's slow, painful growth. Everyone in AA who has been sober any length of time knows how slow this growth spiritually is. Then let's take the professions. The doctors, clergy, or the dentist, or the attorneys, or whatever you have. No one starts out at the top. First, there's long years of study. Then there's the apprenticeship, perhaps the internship for the doctor. And then only is he admitted to practice as a doctor or an attorney, and only then, after years of such practice, maybe he will reach the top. Then in material things, after all, a sculptor does not blast out a statue. He carves it out, a little here and a little there. The skyscraper is not built from the top down. We fill the earth with the foundation, and from that foundation we build the skyscraper. Even in society, As you know, their first is the debut. Is that the way you pronounce it? And only then is such a young lady accepted as a member of society. The same thing in the physical world. First, the seed is planted in the womb of the mother, and then there's 9 months growth, painful birth, then slow growth through childhood and adolescence, and only then does the human being reach maturity. And some never reach maturity. Then in the world of the mind, the genius is not an educated person. The only educated person is the one who has spent years of disciplined study, of learning and relearning, so that he ends up with a disciplined mind that tells him what to do with the knowledge that he has acquired. It's a universal law of nature. No one starts at the top. No one nor no thing begins at maturity. Now, there's one exception. As all laws, there's one exception to this, and that's the gadfly. You know what the gadfly is? The gadfly is a little moth-like creature who lays its egg on the water in the north woods, and then the chrysalid comes from the egg, and from the chrysalid it grows its wings, and then it zooms to a great height in the air, and just as quickly it falls back into the water, fish food. That's the gadfly. We have the same exceptions in other lives. The sudden saint suddenly ain't a saint, because you don't reach sanctity overnight, just like that. The sudden member of AA who acquires sobriety in all the program, just like that, one of these days he loses it just like that. The same way with the sudden star in the heavens, or to become more modern, right down to the present day, Sputnik. It appeared in the heavens very suddenly. But as they tell us, it won't be long until Sputnik is no more. But the other stars and the planets will go on and on and on. But they didn't begin just like that. The conviction of this is absolutely necessary for a proper understanding and practice of the principle of easy does it. Now, easy does it basically is the principle based on God's workings with the world. You have such expressions as the mills of time grind slowly. Or another one, Rome was not built in a day. It took 7 days, according to the scriptures, which we know now scientifically, meant 7 periods of long time for God to create the world. It took 1900 years for him to send his Son into the world. In fact, even in the person of Christ, he did not become Redeemer until Easter, when he rose from the dead. As Paul tells us, only then can Christ truly be called our Redeemer. Now, there's another organization in the world today whose operation is based on easy does it, and that is communism. Communism is not concerned with anything except one thing, and that is universal domination of the world under its rule. God is not concerned except with one thing, the ultimate having mankind with him happy forever. So the incidentals that happen along the way are not disconcerting. God goes along day in and day out, emphasizing the ultimate. And that's the reason God can be so tolerant and is so patient and is so understanding as long as he reaches his ultimate purpose. And the same way with communism. What does a side war mean to the communist? Or a Cold War, or an uprising here or there, or a setback here or there? They have their eyes glued on the ultimate, and they know it will take time, a long time, and so it is based on easy does it. In all of life's actions and strivings, the secret of practicing easy does it is to emphasize the ultimate. What is my end purpose? If I keep that in front of me, then I won't be so easily disturbed by these things that are so important to me when I don't keep my end purpose in front of me. Then we have the alcoholic, how he has failed in this. Each and every alcoholic here tonight knows very well how he has failed. All of our lives, we wanted everything right now. We wanted them in a hurry. We were determined to achieve, irrespective of what might have gotten in front of us. We were always scheming to win. We were panicky lest we lose. We were fearful of the outcome. The end purpose, the ultimate, we had none. It wasn't long until our ultimate was a little round bottle. And that wasn't very ultimate. That was the ever-present purpose of our existence. Then came Alcoholics Anonymous into our lives. And when we arrived, we were still panicky, we were still frantic, very fearful. But still, we wanted our answers right now. How long is this thing going to take? After all, how long is these jitters going to stay with me? Then it was that somebody came along, patted me on the shoulder, and he said, "Now look, Bud, take it easy. Easy does it. You didn't get drunk overnight, and you're not going to sober up overnight. Take it easy. Sobriety is a lifetime of effort. Take it easy. Easy does it." It's one of the first principles that we heard in AA. And as we turned it over in our mind and even got a semblance of its meaning, we started to learn patience. We began to practice a bit of tolerance, and we knew how to accept instead of to fight against. We had thoroughness, at least in some of our work and effort. We began to slow down a bit and did not hurry quite as much as we did before. And then we began even to eliminate that old habit of years past of procrastination. Because after all, easy does it means do it. Don't put it off, and then it won't pile up. And then there'll never be a day when I have to do so much at one time. You know, a lot of fellows and gals in AA misinterpret easy does it to mean don't do it, let it go. That's a wonderful excuse for laziness. Easy does it. So easy does it means do it when it's supposed to be done. Now, along the path of Alcoholics Anonymous, we picked up a number of signposts that help us in the practice and understanding of easy does it. The first of those is if you can't go through an obstacle, then go around it. How often didn't we do the opposite? We were determined to go through it. And if we got knocked back on our focus, we got up and tried it again. About 9 years ago, I was in Albany, New York. And I attended one of the meetings, and at this meeting, the chairman was an ex-lightweight boxing champion. And he told me a story which has a lot to do with what I'm trying to say right now, about one time when he fought Benny Leonard. He said he fought Benny Leonard 15 rounds. And when it got to about the 6th round, he was really whipped, but he wasn't going to give up. He stayed the 15 rounds, and he got beaten into a pulp. After the fight, Leonard came along, put his arm around him. He said, "Look, Bud, always remember, it's never cowardice to quit when we know darn well we're whipped. If you can't go through, go around." Then the next signpost that helps us with Easy Does It is if you can't solve a problem, accept it. So many people come to me with what is called the unsolvable problems, you know. "Look, Father, I got a problem in my home. I can't do nothing about it." Well, accept it. Then it's solved. In other words, as the Serenity Prayer tells us, to accept the things we cannot change. But the wisdom is to know the things we can't change. Another signpost, if you can't finish today, there will always be a tomorrow, if it is God's will that you finish it. We have a part of the AA program called the 24-hour program. But that don't mean try to do everything in 24 hours. That means do what we can today, and if time is given, we will finish it tomorrow. The old expression that so many people had all down through history, God willing. I'll see you, God willing. The saints and all spiritual writers have an axiom which is very apropos to this particular point. Now, I'm going to give it to you in Latin. There might be one or the other of you here who understands Latin, but the reason I do that is because the Latin is always so much more precise in its meaning. Then I'll give you the English. And the Latin is age quod agis et respice finem, which in English means do what you are doing and keep your eye on the ultimate end, which means emphasize the ultimate. Then the next signpost goes like this: hurry never produced a masterpiece. As I mentioned a while ago, a sculptor does not blast out a statue. He doesn't hack that out. He takes a little bit here and a little bit there. The same way, the painter who paints the masterpiece, he doesn't swish it out overnight, a little bit here and a little bit there. And even the story writer does not write his story in shorthand. A little bit here and a little bit there. Then the next one is time can and will solve and heal all things. Time can and will solve all things, which is very true. 100 years from now, what are your problems and my problems going to mean? Nothing to us, except they might have a bearing on where we're going to be. Another one is, if you don't succeed, try again. Now, we heard that in grade school. But sometimes I wonder if we believed it. So many give up, you know. Well, it's hopeless. Remember the story of Robert Bruce, who had failed, I don't know how many times, and he finally took refuge from his enemy in the cave, and as he was lying there, he saw this spider attempting to spin this web, and each time it got about finished, the web broke. Time and time again. Finally, he made it. Bruce went out again, and this time he became the victor. If you don't succeed, try again.